We're going to review the Unit 5B practice test now. So you'll go through, and any problems that you are unsure about or you need a little clarification, go ahead and watch. The other thing is, any problem that you got correct, if it took you more than two minutes or so to get that problem done, I want you to watch the video for that problem as well, just because I may show you a method that is much more efficient way to get to the answer. Okay, so our numbers 1 and 2. Number 1, yesterday we talked about m is the slope. And that handles this first question. But the second question, for explaining the meaning, you have a couple options depending on how you view the slope. You could see it as the pattern of the line. Okay, you could see it as the rate of change of a line. Okay, you could see it as the steepness or flatness of the line. Okay, there are other options of how you see the slope being represented, but it's important that you classify it as slope and to explain what it means. The other thing that's important is, on the test, you might be asked what the B represents. Okay, so be prepared to explain what the B represents. It is the y-intercept. Okay, you can explain that as being the starting point of a situation. You could say it's the flat rate of a real-life situation. You could say it's the point where the line crosses the y-axis. They're all different options of what the B could represent. Number 2, name 2 ways to distinguish a proportional relationship from non-proportional. Okay, I'm going to make 2 lists. Okay, so a proportional line passes through the origin, while a non-proportional line, that says does not pass through the origin. Okay. Another piece of information would be the equation is, okay, sorry about that. So y equals mx is our formula. Now technically there is a b, but the b equals 0. Okay, so because it passes through the origin, the y-intercept is 0. But in our non-proportional, we have our equation y equals mx plus b, and b is not 0. So b can be any number but 0. I would tell you on the test, focus on these 2 pieces of information. Don't worry so much about number 2. Okay, know what b represents and explain it. Know what m represents and explain it. Number 3 is a bonus. There will be a video posted that will help you with that. Number 4, the graph represents a linear function. Select the equation that represents the graph. Now I would tell you, on a problem like this, don't go through each equation and graph them. Go to the graph and label the y-intercept and the slope. You find those 2 things and you'll find your answer. My y-intercept is right there, -1. And if you look, all are -1, so that didn't really help us. Won't be that way all the time. So what we need to focus on is the slope. So I'm going to pick 2 points that cross the grid marks. Take these 2. Okay, I'll zoom in for you here. I'm going to take these 2 points and I'm going to calculate the rise and the run. My rise is 1, my run is 2. So my slope is 1/2. So that eliminates A. Oops, excuse me. That eliminates C, and that eliminates D. Double check yourself that it's really 1 over 2 because they give you 2 as a slope thinking that there's a chance you might do run over rise. So be very careful that you have that calculated correctly. It's rise 1, run 2. The other thing, do you see how my line is going up? Because my line is going up, it's positive. So I know that A is the answer because it's positive 1/2. Okay, my rise was up 1, which is positive, to the right 2, which is positive. These are both positive movements, which gives me a positive slope. Okay, let's look at numbers 5 and 6. Number 5 wants to know what's the y-intercept for function 1. What we know about the y-intercept is that our x-coordinate is always 0, no matter what our y-coordinate is, okay? So x-coordinate is always 0. If we take a look at function 1, do you see where my x-coordinate is 0, my y is 3? That makes my answer D. Now you could have graphed it. You could have said, okay, -1, 6, 0, 3, excuse me, -1 is positive 6, 0, 3, 1, 0. Okay, so you could have gone through and you could have graphed it and you could have seen, oh, there's the y-intercept. Problem is that takes way too long. Okay, you don't have time to go through and do that every time. You need to know that the x is 0, that y value is your y-intercept. So for 5, my answer is D. Okay, so now for number 6, which function has a greater rate of change? They're asking for the slope. Okay, we want the larger slope or the steeper line. So function 1, I don't see the slope there. So for function 1, I've got to use my formula, and we're going to say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, and so I pick 2 points. I'll say 0 minus 3. Okay, so I'll take these 2 right here. So 0 minus 3 over 1 minus 0 equals -3 over 1. Function 2, my slope is -3, which is equivalent. Okay, and this graph, if I find 2 points, I go down 3, I go to the right 1, so my slope of function 3 is -3 over 1. And if you notice, all 3 are the same. My answer is D. Okay, so for number 7, which graph represents the given equation? 2 pieces of information we need to know. -1/3 is our slope. -2 is our y-intercept. Okay, a few other things we know. Because our slope is negative, that means our line is going to go down. So it's going to head in the down direction. So because we know it's going to head in the down direction, then we can eliminate C and we can eliminate D. So we know it's either A or B. Our y-intercept is -2, which is right down here. The only line that goes through -2 would be A. So A is our answer. Okay, number 8. Consider the line shown on the graph given the equation in the form y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. So our y-intercept is right here. And our slope, we have a couple options. We just want to go from one point to the next. If I draw my little triangle, I get down -1 to the right +1. So my slope would be -1 over 1 because I went down 1 and to the right 1. You could have also gone from any 2 other points. Let's say I wanted to go to these 2 points. I would go down 3 and to the right 3. And these 2 numbers are actually still equivalent. So the most simplified way that you could write this equation is y equals -x plus 7. Okay, my y-intercept right here is 7. That gives me my b. My slope is -1 over 1. which could be written as just negative x. You could have also said y equals negative 1x plus 7, y equals negative 1 over 1x plus 7, y equals negative 3 over 3x plus 7. As long as this slope number is equivalent to negative 1, then you're good. That's all for number 8. Okay, for number 9, this graph shows the relationship between the amount of money in Angelo's savings account and the number of weeks Angelo has been saving money. He starts with $10 in his account. Select the statement that correctly reflects what is shown in the graph. Okay, so a couple things to notice. Our tick marks are not going by 1s on the y-axis, they're going by 3s. So keep that in mind when we're deciding what's happening here. Also, notice that these tick marks on the x-axis, the ones at each little tick mark is a half. Okay, so be aware of that when we're looking at our choices here. So the first thing they're looking at is the slope. So let's find the slope of this line. I'm going to find the slope from 2 spots that cross the tick mark or the grid marks perfectly, just because I'm not trying to estimate anything. So when I look at my tick marks on the y-axis are by 3s. So my rise is actually 12. I'm going up, so it's positive 12. Now to the right, each of these is 1. So my run is actually positive 3. Okay, so again, the tick marks are going to determine your answer here, so be very, very careful. So my slope is 12 over 3. They're both positive, so it's going to be a positive 4. So that means A is out, B is out. So it's either C or D. Now the savings rate is $4 every week, or $1 every 4 weeks. Okay, so what we need to look at here is if my rate is 4 over 1, my slope is 4 over 1, that's my rate. The slope equals the rate. So if my slope is 4 over 1, that means $4 for 1 week. So my answer is C. Okay, you could have also done, you could have taken a look at 1 week. If I did my slope for 1 week, I go up 4 over 1, that's $4 1 week. Okay, number 10. Marcy and Kaya wrote down 2 different functions that have the same rate of change. That means they have the same slope. Marcy's function is represented by the table. Graph a function that could be Kaya's. So here's what's happening. If we want 2 different functions, but they could be the same function, we're looking for the same slope. Okay, so we want another line that's the same slope. That's our goal. So if I look at Marcy's, I'm going to do Marcy's in red. I'm going to plot Marcy's points. Okay, so I'm going to plot Marcy's points and draw a line. Okay, now I'm going to try to figure out a line for Kaya. Now the thing about Kaya is I need to have the same slope. Okay, so I want the same slope as Marcy. So my slope for Marcy, let's go for 2 points. My slope for Marcy is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 2. Okay, or 3. So I need Kaya's to have a slope of 6 over 2. Okay, so I'm just going to pick any old point, anywhere, doesn't matter where, and I'm going to make my slope 6 over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 2. And I'm going to connect my points and make a line. So what you're going to find is you can have any line as long as it's parallel to Marcy's. So any line parallel to Marcy's will work. So any line parallel to Marcy's. Okay, next up. Which table of values can be represented by the function y equals 4x minus 1? Now you could have gone through and you could substitute points into each and see which ones fit. Okay, that problem with that is that will take you way too long to get through each of these options if you're just substituting. Okay, what you can do is you can take a look and say, all right, well I need to find the set of numbers that has the same slope. of 4 and has a y-intercept of -1. Okay. Now, a couple ways you can look at this here. Let's start with the y-intercept first. The y-intercept is going to be 0, -1. We know that for sure. If I take a look here, do you see in B, when y is -1, x is 3. That means this is not going to be an option, so B is out. Take a look at D. I have a y-intercept of a y value of -1, but my x is not 0. That means D is out. So that actually brings us down to A and C. Pretty cool. If I find the slope, okay, because this is something people are going to do. If you find the slope, I'm going to say -3 minus -7 over -1 minus -2. If I add the opposite, I end up with a slope of 4 over 1, which is actually my slope here. So your first thought might be, oh, perfect, it's A, but don't think it's A yet. Let's look at the next one. If I do my slope formula, -5 minus -9 over -1 minus -2, add the opposite, I end up with 4 over 1. So these both have a slope of 4. Okay, so we have a little issue. What you have to do now is you have to either, I mean, you could graph these, that would still take forever. What I want you to look at is I want you to look at the pattern. From this point, I have to say if x is 0, y has to be 1. I could go through and I could plot in some points, okay? So I could substitute. And I could say, all right, well, y equals 4 times x minus 1. So if x is -4, like we have right here, I end up with -16 minus 1. Add the opposite, I get -17. So if y is -4, if x is -4, y has to be -17, is it? Nope. A is out. Look at this. If x is -4, y is -17, that's what I got here. C is my answer. Another option you had here was I could have looked at the pattern. See how these are going down by 1? Up by 1? My next number in the pattern would be 0. Take a look at the pattern here. The next number in my pattern would be -1. That's my y-intercept. That would have been another option of how to find the right answer. Okay, number 12. Consider the graph of the line. Which equation has a rate of change greater than the rate of change for the line shown? So I need my slope to be greater. Okay? So if I take a look at the line here, my slope for this line is 2 over 1. Okay? So slope of this line is 2 over 1. So I need one of these to have a slope that's greater than 2. Which of those slopes is greater than 2? The answer is D. 3 is the only number that's larger than 2, or greater than 2. Okay, for number 13, a small swimming pool has 42 gallons of water in it. To fill it, water is added at a rate of 6 gallons per second. Select the equation that models the relationship between water and time. Okay, a couple things. Our starting point is always the y-intercept. Okay, our rate, so anytime you see the word per, each, okay, that's our slope. So our starting point is 42 gallons. So this pool has 42 gallons of water in it to start. That's going to bring us to B or C. Now our rate is 6 gallons per second. So this right here, 6 gallons per 6 gallons per second makes B our answer. If you're struggling with something like this, you can put some numbers in and you can see, if you say, okay, well, after 1 second, it would be 6 gallons for the 1 second plus the 42 that was in there. 12 gallons for 2 seconds plus 42, and you'll start seeing the equation kind of come out. Okay, for number 14. Okay, for 14, we want to know what is the difference between the rates of change for the two functions. The second one's rate of change is 5. The rate of change for the first one, we're going to have to find the slope. So I'm going to just pick 2 points and I'm going to do my subtraction. This is where you say second y minus first y over second x minus first x. So I'm going to say 12 minus 6 over 3 minus 0. That gets me 6 over 3, which is 2. So number 1 has a slope of 2. Number 2 has a slope of 5. The difference is 3. That's your answer. And the last one, we have the relationship between a monthly cell phone plan and the number of minutes used per month. Okay, so what we have here is we have 2 cell phone plans. The first is in a table. The second, plan B, is an equation. This question part says, the flat rate is defined as the monthly cost for the phone when 0 minutes are used. Okay, so any situation, whatever the flat rate is, or the base cost, whenever the measurement is 0, whatever, like if the time is 0, the distance is 0, whatever you're paying, or whatever the total is, when the thing that's changing is 0, that's your flat rate. That's your y-intercept. Okay, so what we're looking for is the y-intercept, basically. What is the difference in dollars between the flat rate for B and for A? So for our flat rate is when the minutes are 0. Our flat rate for A is $30. For plan B, our flat rate is when the minutes are 0, so it's our y-intercept is the flat rate. Our y-intercept is a 40. The difference between the two is $10. Now on the test, you'll be given a situation very similar to this, and you'll be asked to identify the slope of each. You'll be asked to identify the y-intercept of each. Okay? You'll be asked to write equations of each. So what I would do on this problem is I would take the table for cell phone A, and I would create an equation for it. Hit pause, make your equation, and I will write the equation down so you can check yourself. Okay, so your equation would be y equals 0.20x plus 30. The reason it's 0.20 is because for each set of 2 minutes, it goes up, it's not 20, it's 10. For each set of 2 minutes, it goes up 20 cents. So that means for each minute, it goes up 10 cents. So that's your equation. That's it.